a guy like Tim Pawlenty or Scott Brown, what does he bring to the banks? Why do they want to pay him to work for them?
Access. Understand, it's a very simple proposition. The banks have so much at stake here. It's been calculated that the guarantee for the too big to fail institutions is worth $83 billion per year, just about the entirety of their profits. When you line up a Tim Pawlenty and a Scott Brown and a slew of Democrats as well, you can shroud any statute that's passed, Dodd-Frank, and tie it up into a pretzel so that even a Volcker rule, which would have been critically important, still hasn't been implemented. The banks get to be too big to fail with a guarantee. We found out last week they can't be prosecuted. They have access to our money. They play with other people's money and make an enormous profit. And the cost of hiring a Scott Brown or Tim Pawlenty is peanuts compared to what they have at risk.
And so what do they want right now, right? Because as you said, that $83 billion number, which is calculated by Bloomberg View, right, it's in the context even of Dodd-Frank. It's the idea that we are still giving this big implicit subsidy. And I actually have some concerns about that number, but even so, there's a real feeling Dodd-Frank was much too light on the banks. And so, but they're not coming to Democrats and celebrating it. They are furious. I mean, when you listen to Wall Street, when you talk to them, they feel like their business is being destroyed by Washington. So what is it that they think they can get here?
There's a bit of acting that goes on. In other words, they put on public pretense of being upset. Dodd-Frank is going to destroy us. But let's recognize what has remained the same. The largest banks control a larger share of deposits than they did before. Their asset base is a greater percentage of GDP. They now have an explicit guarantee, not an implicit guarantee. They are better positioned to weather the next storm with taxpayer money than they were before. So they pretend that they're being beaten up. But in reality, they won the battle when Tim Geithner said, we don't want structural change. Barney Frank pushed for it, but where they are right now is balancing off basically the allegiance of senior Democrats and senior Republicans, all of whom coalesced to essentially preserve a status quo that I think is dangerous for the economy, but that's a separate debate. Both parties participated in this effort to preserve a structure.
And one thing that I think has been interesting in the Republican Party recently is that while you do this sort of Pawlenty and Brown movement, you've also had some Republican thinkers primarily, but a couple of Republican politicians, including Louisiana Senator David Vitter, has joined liberal Ohio Democrat Sherrod Brown to begin talking about breaking up the big banks, to say that what we have now has become uncompetitive and almost an oligarchy.
Look, the president of the Dallas Fed had a great op-ed in the Wall Street Journal of all places today saying break them up. I assume. I mean, he is a very conservative voice. So there is a strain both of populism that resides within the Republican Party, certainly populism within the Democratic Party, regardless of party affiliation, that says, wait a minute, we have a plutocracy and a corporate leadership that is simply sapping the strength out of our economy, and it resides in both parties. So I think that is where you see the convergence between a Vitter and a Sherrod Brown or an Elizabeth Warren as well. And I think all of them are correct. There is that populism. There certainly is not a critical mass, though, to challenge what is the accepted wisdom in the Senate, which is the existing structure is the one they want to maintain.
So what do you think needs to be, and what do you think needs to be done about too big to fail?
I think we should end it. I think that the policies that were articulated by Fisher in the op-ed today, where you say you must raise your capital, there will not be a guarantee. We say to every customer of your banks, you must sign a statement knowing that you will not be bailed out, so that if your deposit, anything above $250,000, or you've bought a credit default swap, or any other derivative from the banks, you will not be guaranteed. So customers know that they will not be guaranteed. The banks will have to pay more for capital. That will force them over time to slim down. Plus, you do what we did for 50 years, set absolute numeric limits on the size of the asset base of particular banks to shield the economy from the downside risk of failure. These things are easily done. They should be done. And I think when we did it for 50 years, we didn't have a banking crisis.
Governor Eliot Spitzer, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, sir.